Back when tigers smoked, before Goguryeo and Baekje claimed their genealogies, in the frozen valleys and wind-swept plains of Manchuria, there rose a kingdom known as Buyeo that lives half in history and half in legend. The founding of Buyeo comes to us in three voices: the sober administrative pages of the Chinese histories, the myth-woven chronicles of Korea, and the patient testimony of earth and pottery. Now, each speaks a little differently, but together they form a traceable beginning. In the Chinese histories, Buyeo appears on the maps of empire as a polity beyond the commanderies, a northerly people they grouped as part of the Eastern barbarians. Its location was thousands of miles north of Zhuangtu Commandery, a land originally belonging to the Turpan. It had Goguryeo to the south, Yilao to the east, Zhanbei to the west, and Roshue to the north. Initially, Buyeo was under the supervision of the Han commanderies, and they record diplomatic exchanges and tributary ties rather than dramatic foundation myths. They describe Buyeo as an agricultural, chiefdom-style state with aristocratic ranks and a now extinct language similar to those of nearby peoples. Buyeo was no ordinary land. It was a kingdom of resilience, forged in the cold but fertile northern climate where survival required both strength and unity. The people were skilled in farming, tending to millet and rice, and in stock breeding, raising fine horses and cattle. To outsiders, Buyeo was seen as a land of abundance, where agriculture and livestock flourished side by side. But Buyeo was more than just fields and herds. Its people honored the rhythms of nature. Every 12th month, its 80,000 households would gather for a grand Chechon event called Yongo, the Welcoming Drums Festival. The sound of massive drums thundered across the valleys, echoing into the mountains. Men and women sang and danced not just in joy, but in reverence, for this was a sacred rite to honor heaven and earth and to remember their ancestors. For that brief time, the kingdom was united in song, laughter, and ritual. The law of Buyeo was quite strict. The penalty for murder and adultery was death. Even a jealous woman could be put to death. The family members of murderers were turned into slaves. Thieves had to repay what they stole 12-fold. But the people of Buyeo were characterized as honest people, not inclined towards banditry, although the wealthier citizens owned slaves. The commander of the strongest tribe became the king. He ruled from the center, while the other commanders ruled their respective tribes. In times of famine, or if the king was weak, he was either killed or forced to resign. The kings claimed descent from the heavens, ruling not only as monarchs, but as sacred leaders. When a king went on a mission, he was described as wearing a brocade and feathers adorned with silver and gold at his waist. He ruled with the assistance of 5 ministers, and when he died, his body was laid in a great tent. The people wept and mourned for several months before his burial, yet life did not stop. For outside the tent, the kingdom carried on. There was also the custom of burying people together when a king or aristocrat died. The Korean Chronicles tell more intimate, legendary beginnings. The Samguk Sagi and the Samguk Yusa preserve origins that tie Buyeo to a sacred genealogy. Buyeo's foundation begins when a son of heaven, He-mo-su, descends to earth on a chariot pulled by 5 dragons. He later fathers Jumong, the famed founder of Goguryeo, thus creating a family tree linking Buyeo, Goguryeo, and, by later claims, Baekje. Because these texts were compiled a millennium after the events and include folklore, historians treat them as cultural memory rather than as literal datable events. Archaeology in northeast China and the Liaodong Plain shows a gradual emergence of state-level communities from the late Bronze Age and early Iron Age cultures. Archaeologists have named and as Buyeo predecessors. Material changes, such as the adoption of ironworking, fortified settlements, and the long-distance trade with Chinese polities, provides the background for a political consolidation that the name Buyeo came to denote. Archaeology therefore supplies the plausible historical canvas on which both the administrative notices of the Chinese records and the founding myths of the Korean Chronicles were later overlaid. If we combine the three channels, then a cautious narrative emerges. Buyeo was a federation kingdom formed by the union of several tribes living around the Songhua River in Manchuria. There were several Buyeo kingdoms, including Northern Buyeo, Eastern Buyeo, Galsa Buyeo, and Jolbon Buyeo. Yet Buyeo's story is not without hardship. Its borders pressed against powerful neighbors, and over time, pressures grew. Invaders struck, most notably the Shanbei in the 280s CE, and as rival kingdoms rose, Buyeo's power began to wane. But Buyeo did not vanish into the snows of history. Its spirit lived on. From its people came the ancestors of Goguryeo, one of the most powerful kingdoms of Korea. The traditions of Buyeo, the thundering drums, the sacred rites, the harmony of farming and herding, became the foundation stones for later Korean civilization. So when you hear the beat of a drum, or see the vast northern plains, remember the kingdom of Buyeo, a people who lived in balance with the earth, honored the heavens, and left behind a legacy that shaped the destiny of Korea itself.